It wouldn't be a Dean rally wearing a coat. All right. I'm Jim Hutter, and God, are there a lot of you. Woo-wee! I'm co-chair of the Story County Story County for Dean Committee and advisor for ISU's Cyclones for Dean, so that's why I'm here. I'd like to welcome you all and make sure you've signed in so that we have your names, etc. Now, let's all remember the governor he's been traveling a lot, so he may not know where he is. Let's be ready. He's out there. Let's tell him, where are we? Ames, Iowa? Ames, Iowa. Oh, I didn't hear you. Once more. Ames, Iowa. All right, welcome to the governor here. Now, what do you think about it? You know, let's try out some favorite cheers. We used to have a football player here named Dexter Green. And the cheer was, Dexter, Dexter, Green, Green. What if I said, Howard, Howard? Green, green. Oh, you catch on quick. This is a college crowd, isn't it? Howard, Howard. Green, green. All right, way to go. Now, you've heard of Give 'em Hell Harry. What if we were to give 'em hell? Howard. Oh, you're quick, but that wasn't too good. Give 'em hell? Howard. Yes, much better, much better. Okay. I like Run, Howard, Run, Run, Howard, Run. We want him to do that, don't we? Okay. Now, first of all, let me also tell you that I have a favorite saying. Dean, Dean, you're the top of the class. Come November, Bush is out on his ear. You like that? Okay, let you introduce, and we'll say hi to some people. First of all, I want to single out, but I don't know where she is, Hannah Chantal Muse, who is the... Where are you, Hannah? There you are. Come on. Get close. She is the president of ISU DIMS and doing a terrific job. Then let me introduce you to the leaders of the Story County for Dean group. Over here on my right is Joel Taylor. There he is. And Dave Stone. Jen Osen, our secretary. And Drew Miller is not here. Where's Drew? All right. I guess he's got the money and running. And our president is Jess Wilcox. All right. Well, we're all here to hear the straight-talking candidate whose opposition to the war, whose favoritism for health care reform, who's for better education, especially for college students, and the environment, and a lot of other good things. And to get the program started, I'm going to turn it over to our president of Cyclones for Dean. Give a hand for Jess Wilcox.
Thank you, Jim. Well, hello, Iowa State. How's it going? Woo! I'm really excited to be at this Commit for a Change event. And Governor Dean is shown to be a candidate for the students. This event is definitely a prime example. So let's get fired up because he's coming out real soon. You guys ready? All right. First, I'm really excited to announce the winner of the raffle. And that winner is Clarice Harold. So, all right, right on. You will be getting a $100 ticket to the Jefferson Jackson dinner, which is tomorrow. So, that's awesome. That's awesome. Okay. Well, it is my privilege to introduce to you Herman Quirmbach. He is the state senator of Ames, and he is also an ISU professor of economics. So, ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause for Herman Quirmbach.
Boy, there are even more people here than in my classes. I didn't think that was possible. Well, welcome, and it's good to see you all here tonight. Thank you for your interest in the campaign this year. Thank you for your interest in your community and in your country. we have a unique responsibility here in Iowa. We go first. And I can't think of anybody better to go first than the people of the state of Iowa. It's a privilege, but also a responsibility. We don't get to choose the final nominee, but we're going to have a very, very large say in who that nominee is likely to be. So we need to take this decision very carefully and very wisely. All right? Now, over on the Republican side, the caucuses are going to be kind of boring. Yeah, not just because they're Republicans. Because they kind of know who their guy is going to be, right? On our side, though, we have quite a contest and a lot of very good people to choose from. So it's our responsibility to listen and to educate ourselves and to make a wise choice and then to implement that choice, to show up and to participate. Now, this is an important election coming up. It's probably the most important election in at least 2 decades. There's a lot at stake. Every woman of childbearing age in this room, your right to make your medical decisions, your right to choose your own reproductive choices is at stake. If George Bush is reelected, in all probability, you will lose the right to choose, and the government will be making that choice for you. We can't let that happen. Every day in my classes, I have a couple of students who show up in their ROTC uniforms, and they wear those uniforms proudly. And I know that if they're called to serve, they will serve honorably and bravely and well. But it scares the hell out of me that their lives may be put at risk in the furtherance of the foreign policy of the most reckless administration in my memory. We've got to make a change. Now, I'm a professor in the economics department, and I'm also concerned for all of us about the economic situation. George Bush, in less than 3 years, has lost 3 million jobs. Yes, we got a few of them back last month, but with a full year to go, it is almost impossible that he will get us even back to the level of employment that he inherited from Bill Clinton. This is the worst record of job creation of any president since Herbert Hoover in the Great Depression, and we've got to change that. George Bush's fiscal policy is also record-setting. He's taken us from record surplus to record deficit. Bill Clinton did the opposite. He took us from record deficit to record surplus. Bush has reversed that, and he has done it in record time. The national debt is once again soaring up, and you know who's going to have to pay that debt. You are the workforce of the next generation. When it comes to state effects at the state level, we have seen state revenues go way down. A direct result of that is that the state legislature has cut over $200 million from the region's budgets. A direct result of that is that your tuition has gone skyrocketing upwards. That's right. So what's the bottom line? What's the bottom line here? The bottom line is that your education has gotten more expensive, your prospects of getting a job when you get your degree have gone down, and the burden that you're going to have to shoulder has gone way up. Way to go, George. Fortunately, we have some good people who are running this year who are going to be able to fix that. And the person you're going to hear from tonight not only has good ideas, but as a governor, he's got a record, and it's a record of accomplishment. Now, I'm not going to try to tell you how to vote. That's something you have to make up for yourself. But give a listen to the man here tonight, because I think you'll like what you're going to hear. And now, let's see. Jen, you're next? Okay. It's my privilege. It's my privilege to introduce Jen Riggs, who is the Vice President of Cyclones for Dean and a junior in anthropology.
Thank you. Oh my God, everybody, I cannot even begin to tell you how awesome this is. This is amazing. I need you guys to get pumped up because this is huge. This could be the future president of the United States taking the stage right now. I want you guys to get loud. Everybody get loud for me right now. He is standing right out there. Let us welcome him. Let's do it. You guys are awesome. Come on, you can do louder than that. All right. It is my honor to present Governor Howard Dean.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. All right.
Real quick, I promise he's going to talk. This t-shirt right here has been signed by Iowa State students who have committed to caucus for Governor Dean because they are ready for a change. All right?
Great. Thank you very much. We welcome our Republican colleagues here with a Confederate flag. We always like that Republican support. We appreciate it. But we don't think you should use the Confederate flag. We don't think you should use the Confederate flag. It is a divisive symbol. Let me thank you all very, very much for coming. This is, my goodness, how far back does this go? All right. Now we're going to have a little fun at the president's expense tonight. But we're also going to say what we're going to do instead, because you can't beat the president just by saying how dreadful he is. You got to say what we would do instead. Let me first talk about this generation and all of you that are here. First, let me thank you for doing this. I would not be standing on the stage in front of 1,200 people tonight at Iowa State University if it wasn't for you. I'm not kidding. This campaign's been extraordinary, and in many ways you found us. This reminds me a lot of two things. It reminds me of 1960, when I was about 14 years old, when John F. Kennedy, actually I was younger than that, I think it was about 12, when John F. Kennedy became president. He said that this was the torch being passed to the new generation. And this is again a time when the torch is passed to a new generation. We thought that America was one big community, and I'm going to talk about that in a little bit. What you think is that the world is a community. And you have reached out and done extraordinary things, and you have discovered the power of organization of your generation, and I appreciate it. I just want to tell you a little bit about our campaign statistics, which are pretty extraordinary. We raised 3 times as much money as every other Democratic candidate in the last quarter. And that's great, but that's not the big deal. The big deal is that we got over 200,000 people gave us $77 on average apiece, and a quarter of all the people who gave us money were under 30 years old. This is a generation who intends to take their country back, and I deeply appreciate what you're doing. Let me just say one other thing that's interesting about people your age. I realize not everybody here is under 30, but everybody is at least under 30 at heart who's here. But let me tell you one other extraordinary thing about your generation. People say you don't vote. I'm sure you get lectures. Oh, young people don't vote. Young people don't vote. It's true, but only 30% of you do. 70% of you, the highest percentage of any age group, are involved in community service of some kind. 70% of you do environmental projects, cleanups, work for senior citizens, helping them, tutor kids, involved in church groups, helping other people. This generation is not politically apathetic. You're very much involved in your community. The reason you don't vote is because we haven't given you a reason to vote, and that is going to change right now. Let's start with Iraq. The biggest difference I have with all the 4 people at the top of the polls that I'm running against, I disagreed with Dick Gephardt, with John Kerry, with Joe Lieberman, with John Edwards, General Clark. I disagreed with him in Iraq. I think it was a mistake, and we should have said so a year ago. And I'll tell you why. Let me tell you why. I agreed with the first Iraq war because one of our allies had been attacked and overrun, and I thought we had a responsibility to defend them. I supported the war in Afghanistan because 3,000 Americans of every race, creed, color, and religion were murdered on our soil on September 11th, and we have an obligation and a duty to defend ourselves. But this time the president told us that Iraq and Saddam Saddam Hussein and Al-Qaeda were just like this, and he implied that Saddam had something to do with 9/11. 70% of the American people believe that. 3 weeks ago, he admitted there was no evidence for that. This time, the president told us that Iraq was buying uranium for the purpose of making nuclear weapons in Africa. About 3 months ago, he admitted there was no evidence for that. The vice president told us that Iraq was about to get nuclear weapons. 2 weeks ago, there was a report in a major newspaper that said there was no evidence for that. Secretary of Defense told us last March he knew just where the weapons of mass destruction were, right near Tikrit and Baghdad. Turned out there wasn't any evidence for that either. Now, I think my job as Commander-in-Chief of the United States military will be to send American troops anywhere in the world in order to defend the United States of America. But I also think my job as Commander-in-Chief of the United States military will be never to send our troops, our sons and daughters, brothers and sisters and grandchildren, to a foreign country to fight without first telling the truth to the American people about why they're going there. And I don't think this president understands defense at all. Let me tell you why. He gave away $3 trillion of our tax money, $600 billion in interest costs, so we could borrow $2.4 trillion to give to Ken Lay and the boys who ran Enron and all those guys who were writing him $2,000 checks for his $100 million campaign. But he didn't have enough money to inspect the cargo containers coming into the United States every single day. 2 months ago, a major news organization, ABC News, smuggled uranium from Jakarta, Indonesia into Los Angeles, California, and we didn't find out about it. He had $3 trillion of our tax dollars to give away to his friends, but not enough money to buy the enriched uranium stocks of the former Soviet Union, which we're entitled to buy under cooperative threat reduction agreements. If that gets in terrorist hands, then we have a major national security emergency on our hands. The president is about to allow North Korea to become a nuclear power because he doesn't like the president of North Korea, and he doesn't want to have bilateral negotiations with them to try to get them to give up their nuclear weapons. Well, I don't think the president of North Korea is a fine, upstanding citizen either, but I do not believe that the foreign policy of the most powerful nation on the face of the earth ought to be run based on the petulance of the chief executive of that country. Here's what the president really doesn't understand about defense. He sent our reserves and guard over to Iraq. He sent our troops to Iraq. He doubled their tour of duty so that many of them will not be home for 12 months to see their families. And then one Friday night last September, he announced he was cutting their combat pay. Last January, he went to a veterans hospital and told them that veterans deserve the best health care that money could buy. The day before, he had cut 164,000 veterans off their Veterans Administration's benefits. It seems to me, Mr. President, that if you understand defense, you'll understand that defense of the United States of America depends on the people who are in Iraq and depends on the people who are here and around the globe. And those veterans of the United States of American Armed Forces deserve to be treated with respect and dignity, Mr. President. But here's what else the president doesn't understand about defense. Over a decade ago, the Berlin Wall came down and the Soviet Union collapsed and America didn't fire a shot. There were some reasons internal to the Soviet Union for that, but there were a couple of reasons that we had something to do with. One was that we had a strong military, and I think a strong military is important. The other is that most people behind the Iron Curtain wanted to be like America, and they wanted to be like Americans. And after 2.5 years of the presidency of George W. Bush, you would be hard-pressed to find a majority in very many countries around the world today where people want to be like us anymore. And what this president doesn't understand is that the defense of the United States of America depends not only on having a strong military, it also depends on having a set of high moral principles and ideals to which the rest of the world also aspires and admires. That is part of our defense too, and I promise you that if you make me the President of the United States, I will restore the honor and the dignity and the respect which this country deserves around the rest of the world by embarking on a foreign policy that's principally based on cooperation and not confrontation. Let me talk for a moment about jobs. Many people think jobs are the most important issue in this campaign, and I think that's true. In order to get to jobs, we've got to balance the budget. No Republican president's balanced the budget in 34 years in this country. If you want to trust your hard-earned dollars to the federal government, you had better hire a Democrat because you can't trust the Republicans with your money. We will not get the investment we need to create jobs in a country that runs $500 billion deficits year after year after year. The middle class never got a tax cut. None of us got a tax cut. You got a tax increase to pay for the debt, while I got my taxes cut. This president promised, as he made so many promises that were empty, that he would not pass the troubles of this country along to the next generation. That simply was flat out false. We can do better than we're doing now. But we got to have jobs. We have to have a balanced budget. We have to have investment in small businesses. When you give tax breaks to big corporations, they move their headquarters to Bermuda and their jobs to China. We need investment in small business now so those businesses will stay in their community. They create 7 out of 10 jobs. Your generation understands globalization better than anybody else. We have globalized, all right, and we have no choice. We're going to continue to globalize, but all we've globalized so far is the rules that protect multinational corporations. Now we need to globalize environmental protections, human rights, labor protections, and workers' rights all around the country, or this will not work. The genie is out of the bottle. We're going to globalize. Now can we do what we did in this country 125 years ago? Can we make it possible for workers around the world to join trade unions so that they can live middle-class lifestyles and hope that their kids will have a better life than they do? If you want jobs in this country, instead of giving tax cuts to make people who make $1 million, how about investing in roads and mass transit? How about investing in schools? How about investing in renewable energy? How about investing in broadband telecommunications so we can have information-based jobs everywhere in America, not just in the suburbs around the universities? We can do these things. Those kinds of investments create jobs right now to build the infrastructure, and they also make it possible to build more jobs on top of an infrastructure. We have not had a major infrastructure investment in this country since the interstates were built. We need to do that now in new infrastructure. Here's something else we ought to do. In my state, everybody under 18 has health insurance, 99%. In my state, everybody under 150% of poverty has health insurance, all our working poor people. In my state, 1/3 of all our seniors have prescription benefits. We got tired of waiting for Washington to move. They talked and talked and talked. We finally gave up and did it on our own, mostly with our own money. Now, if we can do that in a small rural state which balances its budgets year after year after year, surely the most powerful and wealthy society in the face of the earth can join the British, the French, the Germans, the Japanese, the Irish, the Italians, the Danes, the Dutch, the Greeks, the Israelis, the Canadians, the Norwegians, the Swedes, even the Costa Ricans have health insurance for all their people, and so should we. We can do this. We can do this. We can do this in this country. We don't have to be the only industrialized country in the face of the earth with no health insurance for all our people anymore. Harry Truman put this in the 1948 Democratic Party platform. We need to stand up and be Democrats again. We're never going to beat George Bush by being Bush Light. And the cost, people wonder how much this costs. This costs 1/3 of the president's tax cut. The number is exactly why I so strongly disagreed when Dick Gephardt voted to send $87 billion to Iraq, because the number is $87 billion to pay for health care for every man, woman, and child in the United States of America. I think the Congress and the Democrats and the President made the wrong decision last October. Let me talk about two other things, then I'm going to tell you how we're going to win. How we are going to win. First, I want to talk about renewable energy. This, the president doesn't believe there's such a thing as global warming. There's a lot of science people in this university. Let me tell you a little bit about, I'm a doctor, many of you know that. What really burns me up about this administration, as part of a very, very long list, is that as somebody who's trained in sciences, you know that if you have a theory and you have a fact, and a fact comes along that disproves your theory, then you have to throw the theory out. What these guys do is they throw the fact out if it's inconvenient. I swear that's true. That's true. Global warming does exist, and renewable energy is the key because it creates jobs, it deals with global warming, and it also deals with defense issues. Let me talk to you about how. First of all, if you use wind energy, you can get up to 20% of our electrical needs in this country. The Dutch right now get 18% of all their electricity from wind. The Danes get 20%. We get less than 0.5%. And in Iowa, well, it's from the Dakotas all the way down through Iowa, through Kansas, through Missouri, all the way down to northern Texas. You can get that kind of wind energy and rebuild the grid, putting good IBEW and CWA workers to work, redoing there we go, there must be some labor guys over here. Building the grid, stringing the lines, and you could supply and make money. Iowa gives up almost $6 billion every year for energy that you send out of your state to get the energy you need. You could import that money, and you could light up Minneapolis and Denver and Milwaukee and Chicago and Dallas. Well, you can do that too, but that's a more complicated question for this particular arena. You do need decentralized generation, but that's a little complicated. Secondly, solar, you can do the same thing. Thirdly, ethanol. I say this now, just a minute. We don't want to be accused of pandering. I say this in California where it's not popular too. But the truth is that I know people don't like subsidies for Archer-Daniels-Midland. You don't have to subsidize Archer-Daniels-Midland, but what you do have to do is use 10% ethanol in everybody's gas tank in America, because if you did that, you would reduce the total world oil demand by 2%. That is a big number for only using 10% ethanol, and you don't have to retool anybody's car engine. Biodiesel, use it it dramatically reduces particulates, dramatically reduces things like asthma that are caused by particulates. Conservation, a lot of SUVs and trucks in Iowa, a lot of SUVs and trucks in Vermont. We're not going to get Americans out of their SUVs and trucks. But what you can do is have the same mileage standards for SUVs and trucks that you do for the rest of the fleet. This is not going to put anybody out of work. Ford Motor Company next year is coming out with an SUV that gets 37 miles to the gallon on a hybrid engine. We can do this right now. And we need to do it right now in order not only to create jobs, not only to deal with global warming, but also to stop sending our oil money to the Middle East where it gets used to fund terrorism and the teaching of small children to hate Americans, Christians, and Jews. The other thing I want to talk about for just a second, I just want to talk about this for a minute too, because this is important. I want to talk about prisons and children. We have a prison crisis in this problem, and so do you. No, decriminalizing marijuana is not going to solve the problem. Although it's an interesting idea, and we can talk about that later. Although, since you brought it up, we ought to look at substance abuse as a medical problem, not a judicial problem. That would help a lot. That would help a lot. But uh-oh. I'll be careful what I say. The press is here. We don't want to make any smart remarks. Prisons are a necessary part of American life, but they're the most expensive and the least effective social service intervention that we make, first of all. Secondly, any competent, qualified kindergarten teacher can tell you who the 5 kids are in his or her class that are most likely to end up in prison 15 or 20 years from now. And my question is, if we have some idea who's going to use the most expensive and the least effective social service intervention 15 or 20 years ahead of time, why is it that we're not investing now in very small children and their families to stop that from happening? So, in my state, we do. We visit every mom in the hospital, whether she's the richest or the poorest woman in the state. We ask them if they'd like a home visit. 91% say yes. Now, most of those families don't need any help. Happy to see a friendly face in the community, but the ones that need help get child care, health care, parenting skills and parenting classes, job training skills and programs to keep the dads interested in the kids in case of a single mom. Our child abuse rate in 10 years is down 43%. Child sexual abuse is down 70%. And why does this matter? The reason this matters is because if you go to any prison in America, whether it's in Iowa or Vermont or California or Texas, you're going to find the inmates have two things in common. One is they probably don't have a high school diploma, and two, they were probably abused and neglected in some way when they were kids. We have an opportunity now to get that 43% of kids into college when they didn't have that chance before instead of going to prison. We have got to stop thinking, in 2 and 4 year increments, which is a term of elected office, and start thinking in 20-year increments for kids and 100-year increments for the environment, because that's what we do tomorrow, how long it's going to take to affect it. Let me talk also briefly about higher education. We talked about those kids not having a high school diploma. Here's what I want to do for higher education. You know, we've had a president that's promised us everything and given us nothing except an invasion in Iraq and tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans. Here's what I want to do instead. We want to start to work with you when you're in the 8th grade. If you're struggling to go to college and your parents are really worried about how they're going to pay for it, here's what the promise is. You go to college and you get good grades to get into college, we guarantee you $10,000 a year for every 4 years you're in college in loans or grants depending on your financial status. And when you get out of college, you pay no more than 10% of your income in any year to pay back those loans. And at the end of 10 years, no matter what you've paid, your loans are canceled. It gets better. It gets better. It gets better. We have a lot of people who are going through college and struggling and piling up big loans so they don't dare do the things they really want to do with their lives. So if you'll go into a public service profession, teaching, nursing, police, fire, EMT, social work, something that benefits the public good, you will not pay more than 7% of your adjusted gross income to repay your loans, and after 10 years they'll be canceled. We will do the opposite of what George Bush said. George Bush promised to expand Medicare and then cut 40,000 kids off, AmeriCorps, and then cut 40,000 kids off AmeriCorps. Under our administration, we will increase the number of kids on AmeriCorps to 250,000 and increase the stipend to help for college. We need to make college opportunities available to every single American. And what we mostly need is to give kids in junior high school who are going to high school hope, so they see that there is a way, and there is a way of succeeding. We're not just talking about four-year colleges like Iowa State. We're also talking about technical colleges, anything that will give you high-level skills, whether it's a formal college education or vocational education or whatever it is, apprenticeships, because we know that we need to give people opportunities in order to reduce the dropout rate, and that is what really is going to make the difference. Let me talk for a minute about how we're going to win this and why I think we're the only Democrats that can win this. In the last 9 months, since we started in January with about $100,000 in the bank and 9 employees, you have made this campaign grow enormously. We have 500,000 people like you around the country who are supporting us. We have 140,000 active volunteers in 850 towns and cities around the country in all 50 states who are going out, handing out leaflets, doing whatever they want. We don't tell them what to do to help us in the campaign. They tell us what they'd like to do, and then they go do it. Some of you may have gotten letters from some of these folks. They decided that writing uncommitted the voters in Iowa and New Hampshire might be a good thing. So some people here have gotten handwritten personal notes. Please vote for Howard Dean. This is why we're doing it. This campaign is not only a grassroots campaign, it's about you. How many of you looked us up on the weblogs? A few. All right. You know, we actually hired people to read the weblogs so we know what you're thinking, so that when you think we ought to do something different, we sometimes do. When you think I didn't do so well on television, I find out about it because we read the weblogs. This is a two-way campaign. It's a different kind of campaign because we're raising lots of money in small donations. And our objective is to get 2 million people to give us $100, because we think that there are 2 million people who would gladly give us $100 as the price of a one-way bus ticket from Washington, D.C. to Crawford, Texas. You are changing the way politics works in America, and it's what's got people like you interested in it. What our plan is different than all the other Democrats. They think that the way to beat George Bush is to be Bush light. You vote for the war to show you're tough on defense. You vote for some tax cuts, maybe not all of them. You vote for no child left behind. Any school board members here? Yeah, the no school board left standing. Any teachers here? Teachers call it no behind left. Here's what this bill does. It mandates tests 3 through 8, which you have to pay for. It's an unfunded mandate. They decided that Iowa, which has had one of the best five school systems in the country for 50 years in a row, and Texas, which has had one of the worst 5 for 50 years in a row, and the way to make Iowa schools better is to make them more like Texas. That's what the bill does. I think the people of Iowa have a much better idea how to run their schools than Tom DeLay or George Bush do back in Washington. And every Democrat in Congress who's running for president voted for this nonsense. We are not going to beat George Bush by being Bush light. We're going to beat George Bush by standing up for what we believe in and giving the 50% of Americans who've given up on voting because they can't tell the difference between the party anymore a reason to vote, by showing that there is a difference between Democrats and Republicans, and that we are going to stand up for jobs, for organizing rights, for health care, for a sane foreign policy, and for a balanced budget. And when we do that, we're going to get 3 or 4 million people who didn't vote the last time to come to the polls. And when we do that, we're going to have more votes than George Bush. And this time, the person with the most votes is going to the White House. Now, we need your help to do this. I am not here to ask for your vote. It's not strictly true. Of course I want your vote. I don't only want your vote. I want you to get involved in this. Iowa's a state where if you want to vote, you're going to get involved in the caucuses. You have the power to change this country on January 19th. I'm sure around here someplace there are cards we'd like you to fill out. If you haven't filled one out, please do. We need your help. We need to win here. We need to win in all the precincts around Ames. And you have the power to do that. The people just in this room, without even talking to your friends, which of course we want you to do as well. George Bush and Tom DeLay and the right-wing Supreme Court and the right-wing Senate did not get into power just because they're very smart. And they worked and they did all their homework and are well organized. They are well organized. They also got into power because the Democrats laid down in front of them and were afraid. They were afraid of the 70% poll ratings. They were afraid of Rush Limbaugh and his ugly talk on talk radio, afraid of Jerry Falwell, who wants to tell all of us how to live our lives. And we laid down in front of that. And we're not going to do that anymore. What this president has taken from us is more than the 3 million jobs he's lost, and it's more than all the face we've lost because of Iraq. What this president has taken away from us is our sense of community, our sense we're all in it together. When I was 21 years old, it was the end of the civil rights movement, and America had suffered terribly. Bobby Kennedy had been killed. Martin Luther King was dead. A lot of other people died, including 4 little girls in a Birmingham church, so that everybody in America could have equal rights under the law. But it was also a time of enormous hope. Medicare had passed. Head Start passed. The Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act, the first African-American justice appointed to the United States Supreme Court. It was a time when we felt that we were all in this together. when we felt that if one of us was left behind, then the country wasn't as good or as strong as it could be or as it should be. That it wasn't just my job as a citizen of Vermont to have good schools in Vermont, or your job as a citizen in Iowa to have good schools in Iowa, that you had a responsibility as an American citizen, and so did I, to have good schools in Vermont and good schools in Iowa and good schools in Alabama and in Mississippi and in Brownsville, Texas, and Oakland, California. That was all of our responsibility, all of our responsibility. And when I say I want my country back, or we want our country back, that's what it's really about. It's about acknowledging that we have some responsibility for each other and to each other again as human beings. And that's what the president took away from us. The president used the word quota 3 or 4 times on the evening news one day to talk about the University of Michigan affirmative action program. Even the most conservative Supreme Court since the Dred Scott decision didn't agree with him on that one. But it was worse than that, because the word quota, every pollster and every politician in America knows, is a race-coded word which is deliberately designed to appeal to people's fears that they're going to lose their place in the university or their job to a member of a minority community of color. In other words, the president willfully played the race card, and for that alone, he deserves that one-way bus ticket back to Crawford, Texas. I'm tired of being divided by race in this country. I'm tired of being divided by gender when the President of the United States thinks he knows better than a woman what kind of reproductive health care that she can have. I'm tired of being divided by sexual orientation when the President puts his arm around Rick Santorum and says what a nice, inclusive senator he is, or Antonin Scalia. Antonin Scalia ought to be the next Chief Justice of the Supreme Court after they both said that gay people were the same as child molesters. I would like a president that starts to appeal to the very best in us and stops appealing to the very worst in us. And we can have that president, and we can make a change in America, all of us together. This campaign is not simply about winning elections. None of my campaigns have ever been about winning elections. I haven't lost one, and I don't intend to lose this one. But the truth is that these campaigns are about change. Because if your campaign is about getting yourself elected, what difference does it make? There's 1,000 people who could do just as good a job as you can. We want to change this country. That's what this gathering of 1,200 people is about, is changing America. That's what makes it worthwhile. So let me close by saying this. The biggest lie that people like me tell people like you at election time is if you vote for me, I'll solve your problems. It's not true. The truth is, the power to change this country is in your hands, not mine. Abraham Lincoln said that a government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. I think this president has forgotten ordinary Americans. And you have the power to take back the Democratic Party and make it stand for something again. You have the power to take back this country so that the flag of the United States of America is no longer the property of John Ashcroft and Rush Limbaugh and Jerry Falwell, that it belongs to every single one of us, all of us together. And together, we have the power to take back the White House in 2004, and that is exactly what we're going to do. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a beautiful day. Sky falls, you feel like it's a beautiful day. So let it get away on the road. But you got no destination in the night. In a maze of her each other.